Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's segment of Ask the Expert. My name is Mahwali. I supervise the online WhatsApp team at SADAG. We are today having a conversation with a wonderful person, a registered counselor by the name of Joanne Durand. And Joanne is going to be helping us today unpack a very, very important topic about the understanding of ADHD in children. Joanne Durand is a registered counselor and operations manager at the Goldilocks and the Bear Foundation. It is a foundation dedicated to holistic well-being and transformative growth. With a BA in psychology, a B-Psych, and training as a level 1 DPT practitioner, Joanne integrates lifestyle coaching and mental health care to support individuals and families. Her late diagnosis of ADHD fuels her passion for advocacy, education, and empowerment, particularly for neurodiverse children and their parents. Joanne brings both professional expertise and personal insight to her work, inspiring others to embrace their full potential through understanding, compassion, and evidence-based support. Thank you so much for making the time to join us, Joanne.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Amazing. So the first question that we have is just about us having a clear definition, one that we can rely on in terms of how you would define ADHD in very simple, clear terms. And this is just for the lay people, for the laymen, the parents at home, for some of our counselors as well. How do they now explain to people reaching out what ADHD is in a way that they understand well?
Okay, so I'm going to split this one in two. So your typical definition and then a nice, almost a mythology way to see this. So ADHD is a neurodevelopmental condition that affects how a child regulates attention, impulses, activity levels, and emotions. In simple terms, a child with ADHD does not lack effort, their brain struggles with the control systems. And I often explain it like this to parents. An ADHD brain can be very fast, but the steering is slightly difficult and the brakes slightly lousy. So children might think very quickly, feel very deeply, and have a lots of energy, but stopping, slowing down, organizing themselves, or controlling their emotions, that's the difficult part. So they often want to behave, focus, or follow instructions, but their brain makes that much more challenging. That's why it's very important to understand that ADHD is not a behavior problem, it is a brain-based difference.
Amazing, incredibly simplified for everyone to understand. And now, what are some of the early warning signs of ADHD that are often missed, especially in younger children? Because sometimes early warning signs may be mistaken for personality traits. It may be a matter of, oh, my child is so busy, or she's so strong-willed, or she's even emotional. So what are some of those really early warning signs of ADHD?
Sometimes there's even an added layer. So sometimes it's not even that the signs are missed, it's that there's a misconception overshadowing the signs. So many parents think my child gets good marks, so they must be fine. But the truth is, good marks don't always mean a child isn't struggling. And struggling academically doesn't automatically mean ADHD. So we see children who are overworked, anxious, exhausted, just trying to keep up. And they might be keeping it together at school, but there's a huge emotional and cognitive cost going into it. But the early signs tend to be more of a regulation and age appropriate to their development, not necessarily school performance yet at this point. So we are looking at very big emotional reactions for their age, difficulty calming down once they are upset, a high sensitivity to noise, change, or frustration. So changing in routines, that's a big upsetting for them. Trouble waiting, sharing, or taking turns. Constant movement and fidgeting, that's not appropriate to their current age. So that's very specific, not appropriate to their current age. So it needs to be excessive in comparison to their peers. Daydreaming or checking out, accidental injury or being injury prone, that is a very big one. being easily overwhelmed, or needing a little bit more support than their peers with everyday demands. So, for example, they will forget to brush their teeth, or they will go in to go get their socks and forget they went in to get their socks, something like that, for example. So these are often brushed off as they're either just sensitive, just busy, or they'll grow out of it. So that's why it's very important to look at patterns, specifically across settings and over time. So it's not just marks or a once-off thing, it needs to be across different settings.
Amazing. I think I love the fact that you said we need to look at patterns. So now this simply means that we need to look at the frequency. We need to look at the intensity of these things that are happening to the child. Now the next question that I have is just about how ADHD affects a child's brain and how that might show up at home or even in the classroom at school. I know you mentioned that it's not necessarily about school performance. So let's go deeper into that.
Yes, so ADHD affects the part of the brain responsible for attention, impulse control, planning, organization, and emotional regulation. Now, on the surface, that might not sound like much, but these are the skills that help us manage life throughout our lifespan. So, in the context of school, children can often actually get away with it for a while. They might still achieve good marks, or they might appear compliant, or they might just have little niggles, which is why early intervention is so important. Without support, those challenges can snowball over time. So think of it this way. Impulse control and emotional regulation, for example, as adults, struggle here can lead to inappropriate outbursts with partners, colleagues, friends, which may affect relationships and employment status. The same with planning and organization. Challenges can cause financial stress, missed deadlines, and difficulty managing daily responsibilities. So while there will always be early signs, the practical impact will always become more evident as expectations and demand increase throughout the life cycle. So in the life cycle that is primary or high school, for example, you will notice difficulty starting or finishing tasks, incomplete or messy homework or schoolwork, forgetting instructions, or just forgetting there was homework in general, losing belongings regularly, emotional meltdowns after holding it together every day or in school, for example. So it takes a lot of effort to stay focused and stay grounded in school. So at home, it's then letting it loose almost. And then avoiding tasks that feels overwhelming. So you will definitely see this roundabout in exam times or test periods when the big tasks come, that's when they almost want to shut down. Also struggling with time management and becoming exhausted, anxious, and frustrated when the demands increase. So these early signs are important to notice because, as I said, if it's left untreated, this can ripple into adulthood, affecting self-esteem, relationships, work, and just overall well-being.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And then how can the teachers at school and the parents at home work together more effectively just to ensure that the child who has ADHD is more supported?
So communication and consistency is everything. So parents and teachers should share strategies that work. So at some point, one will see something that works and the other one won't, and share this, work together to the common goal. Use the same language and expectations because ADHD children thrive when they know what's going on and they know what to expect. So if the rules are the same across all of the playing fields, that is knowing what's going on. So focus also on their strengths, not just their challenges. So this will help with that self-esteem and building confidence. And then create simple support plans that can be used in both settings and check in regularly, both with the teacher, the parent, and with the child to see what works and what don't. We always say when adults collaborate, children feel safer and behavior improves.
I love that. I love that. And also for the parents to really notice that the feedback from school is not necessarily judgment on their parenting, but rather more feedback and information in terms of how we are experiencing the child in the school environment.
Yes.
Now, for the parents who feel overwhelmed by the constant complaints from the school, what is the first practical step that they can take?
Well, first of all, pause, breathe, and then focus on how to act because I can just imagine it gets a lot. So just take a breather. Don't take it personally. It's not an attack. However, see it as getting a support meeting. So not a disciplinary meeting, a support meeting. Go in with curiosity, not defensiveness. So what patterns are we seeing? What strategies helps? What isn't working? And how can we do things better to work together? Remember that you as parent and the school, you're on the same team and you're supporting the same child. And the bigger goal is essentially to work collaboratively to create an ecosystem of care where parents, teachers, professionals are all aligned to help the child thrive.
Ecosystem of care. Amazing. I love that. I absolutely love it. The next question that I have is, what does ADHD feel like from the child's perspective? Okay, sometimes we look at it from outside as the adults who are parenting this child or the teachers that are offering support in the teaching environment. But from the perspective of the child, what does ADHD feel like, especially when they are constantly be told to try harder or to focus?
Now, I always love this question because I get to bring in a little bit of my personal experience there as well. So much love for these ADHD kids that we work with. So it's really a nice way to actually give them that voice that they're not ready to actually have. So many of the children that we work with describe ADHD as having a very noisy, busy brain. So where thoughts come fast, all of them feel equally important, and it can be extremely exhausting to manage everything at once. So I hear this a lot from the children I work with, and it's something I remember feeling myself growing up before I actually got my diagnosis. You can sense something is different. You notice other children aren't struggling in the same ways. They aren't being scolded constantly or told you need to apply yourself more on every report card, even when you are giving your absolute all. You also constantly hear, sit still, be quiet, you're too loud, too much, over and over, and it starts to eat away at your confidence. Eventually, children begin to wonder, what is wrong with me? So ADHD is not a willpower or trying hard enough type of thing. It's a difference with how the brain works. And understanding this can help parents respond with empathy rather than frustration and help children feel seen, heard, and supported, not, oh, there's something wrong with you type of thing.
I absolutely think that it is great for everyone to understand that when children feel understood, regulation becomes a bit more possible for them. And then when, as parents, we shift from expecting effort to offering understanding, we often change the child's experience and their outcome. So
Yeah.
absolutely love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. And now, how can ADHD impact a child's self-esteem? And what can caregivers do to protect and build their confidence?
So, children with ADHD often receive far more correction than praise. So, over time, this can really chip away at their confidence, leaving them anxious, frustrated, or believing something is wrong with them. And one of the most important tools for caregivers is to separate behavior from identity. So, instead of saying, you are naughty or you are lazy, rather focus on the action, not the child. So, for example, you're lazy versus it looks like this task was really hard for you. Let's figure out a way that we can make this easier. Or you're naughty versus that action wasn't safe or kind. How can we try it differently next time? So, the whole picture of what you're trying to say is completely different by just rephrasing it. Other ways to protect and build confidence is notice and praise effort, not just results, because them putting in the effort is already more than a child that does not have ADHD. So they're already putting in a lot more energy. Also, celebrate the small wins and do that regularly, even if it is something they are supposed to do. So, if they remember to brush their teeth, praise them. Even if they're supposed to do it, they most likely forgot the previous time, so that is growth. The same with creating safe spaces for mistakes. It is okay to make a mistake, but we need to learn from it going forward. And then finally, reminding a child of their strengths and their talents, because boy, oh boy, children with ADHD, they've got strengths and talents. And because they are constantly getting this negative feedback, they are forgetting this. So they are forgetting, for example, they're great athletes or they have amazing humor or something in that line. So reminding them of their strengths and their talents really helps to build their confidence. And connection before correction is key. So when a child feels understood, their self-esteem can grow even in the face of ADHD challenges.
That is amazing. I love it. Thank you so much. I think I love what you said about separating behavior from identity. Absolutely amazing. And I think it's also very important for parents to note that children, or maybe even adults, borrow their self-image from how adults speak to them.
Exactly.
Okay, so this is how we actually get to view ourselves as children. That would be dependent on how the people that are supposed to be taking care of us speak to us. So that shapes us and forms our self-image. When should a parent consider a formal assessment, and what does the process typically involve?
So I would say considering assessment when struggles affect learning, relationship, and reduces the quality of life. That's generally what a professional would look at with giving the diagnosis in general, the reducing the quality of life. So when you see that, that's an indicator to go. The same with when behavior is consistent across settings. As I said, the patterns and the different time frames, different settings. It can't just be that it's their birthday, so now they're a little bit more hyperactive than normal. So it needs to be different time frames. Emotional regulation is a problem. That's usually also a sign. And then support strategies and home techniques aren't working anymore. So that generally means that the life stresses are starting to make it a little bit more difficult and they need a little bit more support. So the process usually includes a developmental history, parent and teacher questionnaires. As I said, they need to get the full image of the child, clinical observations, and sometimes even educational and psychological testing is involved. So this is where things get a little bit more complicated depending on what sector you are looking at. So for private sector parents looking for support, you can consult a pediatrician, a psychiatrist, clinical psychologist, or educational psychologist who is experienced with ADHD assessments. So private assessments offer quicker access and more comprehensive reports, but they are paid services. On the public sector side, so parents using the public sector, if you reside within the Cape Town area, you can reach out to the Goldilocks and the Bear Foundation. So we provide free screening and intervention services for primary school children with ADHD. Alternatively, any other option outside of the Cape Town area, parents can start with their local clinic or community health center and request an ADHD assessment. Then they will take the process from there. But no matter the path, early intervention and intervention in general can make a real difference in your child's learning, confidence, and emotional well-being.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. Very insightful. And I think just a reminder to the parents out there to remember that formal assessment ensures that the child receives the necessary support and all in the right time. So now, beyond medication, what lifestyle strategies or daily routines can make a real difference for a child who has been diagnosed with ADHD?
So medication can help some children, but it's only part of the picture. So daily routines and environment support, crucial. And I would say that this should be with every child, whether they have ADHD or not. But one of the most important things parents can do is create predictable routines. Consistent morning routines, homework times, and bedtimes help ADHD brains feel safer and more organized. It's also really important to use visualization and to-do lists because out of sight truly is out of mind for children with ADHD. So when tasks are visible, they're much easier to manage and to remember. Reward charts as well as positive reinforcement go a long way. And then having designated places for belongings like school bags and uniforms really helps to reduce the daily stress of like, where's my bag, where's my socks, all of that before you go to school. Timers and alarms are also incredibly useful. So this is for tasks, reminders. This time I need to brush my teeth. By this time I need to be finished. By this time I need to be in the car, that type of thing, because they will get lost in their own mind. Children also benefit with regular movement breaks. So don't try and force them to sit and work for 4 hours when they come back after school. Give them their movement breaks. We do the Tabata timer usually where it is work for 15 minutes, break for 5 minutes, work for 15 minutes. And it really helps to regulate the energy and help with the focus as well. Then on the side of just general health, sleep, nutrition, and screen time, your three biggest things you need to focus on. So consistent, adequate rest really makes a massive difference with attention and emotional regulation. You can't have a child that only functions on 3 hours of sleep. So I can't even function like that with or without ADHD. I know most people can't. So it's really important that they prioritize their sleep. The same with the nutrition. Aim for balanced meals. Try to reduce sugar and caffeine as much as possible, because if you're already hyperactive and you add caffeine and sugar, it's just going to make things worse. Same with managing the screen time. So we find that too much stimulation, especially before bed, really impacts focus and emotional control. So managing the adequate screen time, especially before bedtime, is really important as well. And then finally, keep instructions clear and simple. Break tasks into small, manageable steps so that the children don't feel overwhelmed. The principle is externalize as much as possible so that your child's environment can do part of the remembering and planning and organizing for them.
Amazing, amazing. And how can parents manage meltdowns when they happen or emotional outbursts in a way that supports rather than shaming the child?
So it's very important to remember that during a meltdown, the child is not choosing chaos. Their nervous system is overwhelmed. It's also important to note that the child is not necessarily thinking rationally in that point. Despite them having a rational reason in their mind, if you ask them later on, it's probably not going to connect at that point. So they're feeling a very strong, sometimes unexplainable feeling. And because of this, they can easily misinterpret a teaching moment as a scolding moment. So that is why we need to separate regulation and comfort from teaching and future development, because both are important, but they can't happen at the same time. So in the middle of a meltdown, your child doesn't need lessons, they need support. So they struggle already with regulating their emotions. So you need to help them and teach them how to do this in the long run. Instead of punishment or talking too much, stay calm, reduce talking until things de-escalate, offer physical safety, validate feelings, not necessarily behavior, but feelings. So I can see you are really upset. Help them regulate through example, not more instructions, because this will become overwhelming. So slow your breathing and let them mirror you. So this will teach them how to do this in the long run. And be present and grounded in their and your own feelings. So once your child is regulated, then you can gently talk through what happened, brainstorm together how to handle things differently next time. And something really important, the best management of meltdowns is actually the prevention of meltdowns. So when your child is calm with no stresses or overwhelm, talk together about what makes them tick. Help them learn what it feels like when the emotions start to bubble up and create a plan before it escalates. So some practical ideas is to teach your child to recognize the early warning signs and have like a code word or a secret signal so that they can let you know it is coming. Use that moment to step in, slow things down, offer support, and remove stresses. This then gives you a chance to either soften the meltdown or just prevent it completely. Regulate first, teach later, plan ahead when calm. That is how emotional safety and lifelong coping skills are built.
Beautiful stuff. Thank you so much. I think what I'm picking up from that is just very important for parents to take note that a meltdown is not an equivalent of a tantrum.
Yes.
Yeah. Amazing stuff. Thank you so much. And what are some of the small but powerful daily changes that parents can implement immediately after watching this live?
Well, first, remember equity versus equality. We all wear shoes, but we do not all wear a size 5 shoe, and that is okay. So if you know your child is a size 7, you would not force a size 5 shoe on your child. So that is exactly the same with ADHD. Treat them the way their brain works, not how everyone else's brain works. Give one instruction at a time. Use visual reminders. Praise the effort and build in movement. The constant routines, everything we spoke about today, they're quick fixes, especially if you structure everything around what makes them tick. Tiny changes can really add up and create a lasting impact.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. As we wrap up, what resources, support systems, or tools would you recommend for parents who have a child that has been diagnosed with ADHD?
So one resource I really love recommending is South Africa's first children book on ADHD. It is called All of These Things Are Important to Me. It is available through the Goldilocks and the Bear Foundation online shop, and it follows a story of Z, a little girl with ADHD, and what that means for her in her day-to-day life. Although it's written as a story, it also includes fact sheets and practical tips at the back. So it is a beautiful tool for parents, teachers, caregivers, children's professionals, everyone. So the book is available in 4 different languages, and the proceeds help fund our free screening and intervention services for our under-resourced communities. But parents can also follow us on social media. We regularly post tips, tools, and educational content on both Instagram and on Facebook. But most importantly, don't try to do this alone. You are not alone. You are not the only one isolated struggling with these feelings. So find your community, find your support, whether it's professionals, whether it's schools, whether it's organizations like ours. Connection really helps to support you, which helps you in the long run support your child.
Thank you so much, Wani, for joining us today and for sharing so much insight and so much knowledge around understanding ADHD in children.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Amazing. So everyone watching from home, if you'd like to connect with any one of our counselors, if you have a child that's struggling with ADHD, or you'd try to get some referrals to professionals that can be able to assist you in that regard, please do not hesitate to reach out to our toll-free helplines, which are 24-hour lines. The numbers to call is 0800 567 567. Until we meet again for the next segment of Ask the Expert, have a lovely, lovely weekend. Okay.